right? If we think, oh yeah, we depend on our mind and body, we can make it work. Our mind makes it work, but there's an inherent dependence there. The aggregates are truly there, right? But again, that doesn't work because even the dependence itself is just labeled, right? It's just labeled. So having gone back and forth in that way, yes?
The Buddha, in that relation, the Buddha did once exist. We're talking about the past, the present, and the future. Once did exist.
Conventionally, yes.
Conventionally, and we're still like the ether of this conventional.
Yes.
For us, it's basically still existing.
Yes, exactly. Conventionally, yes. Wow, for us, existence means inherent existence, right? I mean, to our mind, to the mind that governs our actions. Not so much the mind that is influenced by Buddhism that every now and then pops up, that actually says, yeah, that makes sense. You know, if you have a mind probably now going, yeah, I get that. But the mind that acts in everyday life, it's a different type. That governs your emotions, that gives rise to your actions. That is a mind that is right now not affected by your intellectual understanding of what's going on here, right? So when you say the Buddha existed at some point, yes, that's true. Conventionally, you know, labeled on the aggregates, there was Buddha, but since someone says the Buddha sucks, I don't like that. It shows that there's a resentment towards another person because you have attachment towards the Buddha. You don't need to defend the Buddha. If someone, you know, like in sometimes in India, if someone, or in Pakistan, if someone says something against their religious leaders, they start killing each other. It's bizarre. What their religious leader, it doesn't make them worse or anything. It doesn't harm them. But it's this view that there's something intrinsic in that religious leader, and the religious leader is not encouraging that at all. But there's a sense, oh, there's something intrinsic in them. I cannot bear if someone is rude towards them. And one time someone said that to me about Lama Zopa Rinpoche, that someone said something negative about Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and an older student of Lama Zopa Rinpoche said to the person who tried to defend Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you don't need to defend Lama Zopa Rinpoche. No, you don't need to do that. It's unfortunate that this other person doesn't realize that he's such a great being. And so it's unfortunate that, you know, they have this view and they have the resentment, but that doesn't harm Lama Zopa Rinpoche. You don't need to defend the Buddha, basically, right? You don't need to defend, but it shows we have attachment. We have a sense. If you find yourself getting angry with someone saying something bad about the Dalai Lama, or the Buddha, etc., then it shows there's attachment. And that can only be there in the sense of inherent existence. So that means the Buddha is really there. But of course, conventionally, I agree with you, he was there at some point. Of course he was there. It was a merely labeled Buddha that had merely labeled mind and body, gave merely labeled teaching. I understand that he is merely labeled, etc.
We say that here he says dependence upon the aggregates cannot exist for an inherently existent phenomenon.
Yes.
But we do say that merely imputed, depending upon part, etc.
Yes.
So that could be depending, but not for an inherently existent phenomenon, right?
Yes, it depends. There is a dependence of a non-inherently existent phenomena, but that dependence is also merely labeled. Right? Even dependence. Dependence is the word we give in relation to two things being linked. Okay? The dependence cannot be found. But even the being linked cannot be found. It's much easier with like less abstract things, being dependent, being linked. That's so abstract. My favorite is having a potential. I have a potential, right? It seems like I've got this little blob in the center of my chest. That's my potential. It's much harder to analyze that because we don't even have a real sense what that potential means. We come to that. That's the first chapter. It's all about potential. Really difficult. The potential of the seed to give rise to the sprout. What is that potential? So, what I'm trying to say is those are more abstract ideas. Being dependent, being linked, having a potential, giving rise, right? They cannot be seen with your eye consciousness in the same way as like it has a shape and color. Giving rise, it's one moment who's not there, that is there, we label giving rise, right? It's just labeled. So in the same way, dependence is also just labeled. But because conventionally there is dependence, a thing can only exist conventionally. I mean, I'm sorry, I know this is really hard. We could stick the whole weekend, we could do tables and oranges and, you know, other things. But might as well go into those ideas as well. Not just the objects, the nouns, but also the activities, the relationships, right? All these kind of more abstract ideas.
Can you not find dependence though? Like life is dependent on oxygen.
Oh, life is dependent on oxygen, yes. What about?
So can you not find the dependence kind of being inherent?
What does the dependence mean? What does it mean? When I ask you dependence, if it existed inherently, you wouldn't need another word to describe dependence, right? But you need to, because dependence is just a label, basically, given to something. So what does dependence on oxygen mean? It means, unless I breathe in and out, my blood will not get, what is it, white blood? Is it the white one?
Red.
The red one, okay. So the red ones, right? And then the red ones I need for the organs to do their thing, blah, blah, for my brain to work. And then based on that fact, I say, dependent. There's no dependence, like a stick of dependence. That's the dependence. I can't blame that. It's just that process of me my body staying alive when there's oxygen coming, and the fact that if my body wouldn't stay alive, if oxygen wasn't coming, based on that, I label dependence. If I would stay alive without oxygen, and I would be just as well, then the label dependence would not apply. Simple as that. Right? And then you take the oxygen. Does that exist inherently? You take that apart. Is it that part? That's what we can do, right? Is that fair table? Okay? The dependence. Yeah, that's good you asked that. Because we're almost like dependent arising. It's like that exists inherently now. Everything is just kind of a little bit more real than anything else. The Buddha is too. What is? And here, the next verse, what it talks about is, well, we say the Buddha became enlightened. The Buddha attained an enlightened mind. The Buddha achieved enlightenment. We talk like that, right? And right away our mind thinks, oh, there's this Buddha who suddenly catches the enlightened mind, and now he's enlightened, right? Appropriate. Appropriate is such a weird word. It's kind of like taking ownership of, right? Is there a word in Hebrew? Appropriate, as in like, not appropriate in like this is inappropriate or appropriate, but like appropriate in the sense of taking ownership of. Can you speak up? Just use it, because then every time you hear the word appropriate, I find it's a weird word. It doesn't mean. Do you find it?
No,
Independence.
Independence, alright. So you all got the word, right? Okay. So that word, it kind of means, there's a sense like, I own my mind and body, right? But of course that's just a way of speaking. That's just, there's no inherent I that owns. But in the same way with the Buddha, we think about the Buddha has this quality, the 50 qualities of this, the 50 of that, you know, there's like, whoa, like inherently holds on to that. Okay. But also, actually, if there were inherent taking hold of something, taking ownership of something, actually, the owner, if they were like really, let's put it that way. If they were inherently existent, that which is owned and the owner must be separate. Just like me and this watch. And for me to take ownership of this watch, I must exist before I can take ownership. Would you agree? Right? It's not like me and the watch come into existence at the same time and in that moment I take ownership. No. I must exist before. So if the Tathagata took ownership of, that took on now the enlightened mind, he would be a Buddha, and they exist separately because the Tathagata exists inherently. So therefore his aggregates and him, they are separate. Therefore, like me and this watch, in the same way the Tathagata, the Buddha, would first be a Buddha before he took hold of the enlightened mind. Right? Because they're separate. Of course, this doesn't apply for me in this, because they're separate already. This is not my basis. I'm not labeled on the basis of this watch, and this watch is not labeled on the basis of me. So we are actually separate objects. Again, not inherently existent, because this is labeled on its parts, and I'm labeled on my part. But just looking at me and this watch, we are separate objects. And for me to take ownership of this, I have to exist beforehand before I can do that. Hold on to this. However, with the Buddha, we also talk like ownership. And we have a sense that the Buddha holds that enlightened mind. So there must have been a moment when he took ownership of it. But in that moment, since they're separate because they're inherently existent, there wouldn't be a Buddha without an enlightened mind. Does that make sense? Well, here, if without depending on the aggregates, there could be a Tathagata at all. There couldn't be a Tathagata who would come to the conclusion he doesn't depend on anything. Previously, the whole dependence was a problem. So, being inherently existent and dependent, so it doesn't depend. If it doesn't inherently depend, so there's no dependence, then there could be a Tathagata at all. He would presently depend. There's no Tathagata at all who does not depend upon the aggregates. If you could not exist without depending on them, how could you appropriate them? Okay? Sorry, I just looked at number 5. So there's no Tathagata at all who does not depend upon the aggregates. So it goes back and forth. So previously, without depending on the aggregates, there could be a Tathagata at all. If there could be a Tathagata, he would presently depend on the aggregates. Alright, we've gone through this. Now, there is no Tathagata at all who does not depend upon the aggregates. If he could not exist without depending on them, how could he appropriate them? How could he be the owner of the aggregates that we say this person has the aggregates? Having means possessing them, like owning them, right? We don't say the aggregates have the Tathagatas, we say the Tathagata has the aggregates. I have mind and body. I don't say mind and body have me. Okay? Without the appropriated, there's no appropriation. So the next thing is, if there is, without something being owned, you can't own something. So the Buddha really inherently owns the aggregates, and it would happen before he's a Buddha. On top of that, if there's ownership, it can only be there is an inherent thing to be owned, an inherent owning, an inherent person owning. But that is not possible, because the aggregates also cannot be found. So it's just labeled owner, ownership, that which is appropriated, all that. It's all just labeled, but it doesn't exist in and of itself. So why? Because without the appropriated, there couldn't be appropriation. So it's dependent on something other than itself, so it can't be inherently existent, etc. Without appropriation, there's no Tathagata whatsoever. There's no Tathagata because we talk about a Tathagata owning something, possessing the aggregates. But if you can't find that process of possession, you can't find the Tathagata. Having sought in the fivefold way. So here's really what we've done is now he's not the aggregates, no different from the aggregates are not him, nor is he the aggregates, and there's no possession, no taking hold of it, no appropriation. Okay? In that way. Having sought in the fivefold way, how can that which is neither identical nor different be designated as the Tathagata by virtue of appropriating? By virtue of having those qualities. Okay? So again, they're always taking the assumption of inherent existence. Independence on this other school, the Sammithyas, and just, their view of there must be something there, and based on that saying, nothing would be possible. Okay? So in the fivefold way, we don't really find anything. And so how can we talk about the Tathagata by virtue of appropriating it, inherent appropriating? Whatever is appropriated does not exist inherently. And when something does not exist for its own entity, it can never exist for the entity of another. Again, going back to what they previously said in the very beginning. Thus, the appropriated and appropriator are empty in every respect. As the Tathagata is empty, how can the Tathagata be designated as existing inherently? I told you in the beginning, these texts are very difficult. The first chapter is always the most difficult. Also, in every chapter, the first verses are, in many chapters, the first verses are the most difficult. And then it's kind of like, and then, it sounds like going jogging. First 5 minutes, I want to go home. And then after a while, it gets to it. Okay. Well, at least when I jog. That's the appropriate and appropriator. Okay. We do not state empty, nor do we state not empty. So when we say empty, again, we do not state, it can mean, you can interpret this two things. Either empty as like totally not there, we don't say that, or empty as in inherently empty. Okay, you can read it both ways. So we do not say empty as in like totally non-existent or inherently empty of inherent existence. So the emptiness of emptiness. Okay, very important. Because after all this discussion, emptiness exists through your mind, and it's just a little bit more real. This is how you can recognize it. You get a sense, all this is unreal, like illusions. Only emptiness is really there. Well, welcome your mind to apprehend, like now apprehending emptiness as just being more real, as inherently there. So even the empty doesn't exist inherently. Nor does the non-empty exist inherently. Okay? So neither lack of inherent existence, nor non-empty. Non-empty can be again interpreted. Empty can mean not there, and non-empty can mean, because in Tibetan the word just tongba, empty, can mean not there, and it can mean empty of inherent existence. So that's why it can be read both ways. Non-empty could also mean like existent. Remember, there's two ways of reading the empty. Could be read as empty, as in like not there altogether, or there's no state of empty, as in like empty of inherent existence. But here, we do not state empty of inherent existence. We mean inherently empty of inherent existence. So if you read the empty as non-existent, then not empty becomes existent. So we don't say anything exists as non-existent, or do we say it exists inherently as existent? So either way you can read it. We state neither both nor neither. They're stated only for the purpose of designation. So in other words, anything we say about anything is merely designated. Right? It's merely a convention. How can the four, permanent, impermanent, exist for the pacified? For those who are pacified with regard to lack of inherent existence. How could inherent permanent, inherent impermanent, how could they exist for someone who knows, who's pacified that wrong perception of reality, of inherent existence? How can the four, finite, infinite, exist for the pacified? I love finite and infinite. We use those words, finite and infinite. Infinite? Is that a new word? Infinite. Sorry. Finite and infinite. That's right. Something wrong. How can the four, finite and infinite, how can they exist for the pacified? So we use those words. There's a limit. There's a limit. There's a beginning and there's an end. Actually, very difficult. Like a beginning? Where's the exact beginning of the sprout? There's a conventional beginning. But really, a finite beginning. This is where do I start and where do I end? Tell me, show me exactly. Which atom, if you could see my atoms, which atom belongs to this body and which part does not? And where's the exact, where does the one atom stop and where does it can't? It seems finite. Oh, this is where I start, this is where I end. So it looks, in a way, our mind is so used to the view of inherent existence of something clear-cut, that's why we see it that way. It's an habituation. Our mind is habituated to it. We may think we see things as they really are, but of course we don't. Obviously we don't. There's so much we miss. We miss radioactive radiation and radio waves, as an example. We miss all that. We don't see any of those things. A lot of the smells around us, we don't perceive. A dog perceives a million times more. Is it that much, right? A million times more smells. We only perceive a few. So we miss out on a lot. What we perceive doesn't exist that way. Blue is not really gray. And on top of it, it seems all clear cut. It is this, it is that. Very finite. That's why we believe, we see with our senses everything that's there, but we don't. This is a karmic result of our previous actions, which is just another way of saying, because of all the misperceptions we have of reality, it is reflected in our sense perception. Right? It's part of our sense perception. What we perceive right now is just part of our sense perception. Samdoro Rishi said something really amazing the other day, not so long ago. He was doing the review class after his homelessness teachings. And his homeless had talked about Mount Meru, these mystical kind of ideas of Buddhism like Mount Meru, the four continents, how this world exists, which of course from a Buddhist point of view is not accepted. So someone asked Samdoro Rishi afterwards, after the teachings, he said, well, was the Buddha kind of wrong? Why did he teach that? Why did he teach it? And he said, look, there's no Mount Meru for humans. Because we have a karma to perceive certain things. And we share that karma. And individually it's still quite different, of course, depending on where you sit, your eyes, etc. But it is unique, but we have something in common. And there's definitely not Mount Meru. So to say, from a human point of view, depending on our karma, that there's no Mount Meru, that's correct. But to say, per se, it doesn't exist. And he reminded us of, when you have a bowl with liquid, okay, a bowl with liquid, to a human it appears as water. To a fish, it appears as living space, apartment. To a preta being, it appears as pus and blood. To a godly, like a celestial being, it appears like nectar. Okay? So again, this objective world that I believe there to be objectively there, it's actually what I perceive with my eye consciousness is just a result of the karma I've accumulated. And because everyone agrees with me when I say it's blue, I believe it's blue. Out there there's blue, because you can see it, I can see it, not considering that the reason we see it is because of the causes and conditions we've created that gave us this body, basically. So karma is not like these rays radiating out and they make our eyes see things. It's more like we had the karma to have these particular eyes, right? Short-sighted, not short-sighted, etc. And so perceiving things, and we believe there's this objective world. What is the proof for that? What is the evidence for that? The only reason we say there's an objective world is because we both agree it's blue. No idea whether we see the same thing, just because we call it the same. So, if we label it the same and believe therefore it has to be the same. It's absurd, right? So when someone said that, even with Mount Meru, he said, well, for other beings it's there. We can't say it's not there altogether. It's just not part of our human experience. Fair enough. Right?
Geshe, would you like to finish the chapter before the break?
Oh, thank you. That's a very gentle way of telling me. No, you're right. Okay. Should we take a break first? Exists for the pacified. So how can the four, being pacified in the sense, pacified of our afflictions, of our misperception of reality. So once you've pacified, pacification always refers to, in most cases, refers to, we have no peace right now because of our misapprehension. Once you have eliminated your misapprehension of reality, you're pacified in the sense your mind becomes subdued, you can control your mind in that way, but also you experience peace, as in all the balagan stuff. I don't know
What are the four?
Pardon?
What are the four?
Oh,
There's only two there.
permanent, impermanent, finite, and infinite. Right? So something is permanent. It's this, permanent, as in not changing, impermanent. Or finite. It is like this and not like this. Okay? So in that way, those four, how can they really truly in and of themselves exist. So we do say it's finite. We do say it's this and it's not that, conventionally. But when you really look for that, that doesn't exist. Right? Things go on forever. A continuum cannot be stopped. There's no beginning. There's no end. Even with this table, what makes up this table, it continues on. Since beginning of this time, there was this the physical basis. It will continue on as a physical basis. The mind continues on. Previous moments giving rise to the next, etc. Finite in terms of space and time. It seems very pretty, but yes, structured. It's like this is where it starts, where it ends. But that's just convention. This is where it starts. But when you really look, where does it start, where it ends, you don't really find that. Yes, Nada? Is it Nada?
Doesn't the four refer to permanent, impermanent, both or neither? You said acceptance on each mind.
You're right. You're right. Actually, you're right. How can the four, permanent, impermanent, both and neither, those four? How can the four finite, infinite, both and neither, exist for the passive mind? Yeah, that would make sense because of the etc. I just write the four and then put them together. Yeah, so it's actually 8, 4, and 4. Okay. So again, we always have these four possibilities, as in like either it's this or that, or both or neither. One who holds firmly that the Tathagata exists will have to fabricate his non-existence after having achieved nirvana. So if you hold firmly onto the Tathagata existing truly, well then you have to get used to the non-existence after you achieve nirvana. Because then you have to let go. In order to achieve this nirvana, you have to let go. Since he's empty of inherence, neither the thought that the Buddha exists, nor that he does not exist after he has achieved nirvana is tenable. So after we have achieved, or after the Buddha has achieved nirvana, none of that is tenable, because if someone can achieve nirvana, it can't exist inherently. So all these thoughts that it exists, it does not exist, as in like inherently exist, inherently not exist, they don't make sense. If nirvana actually was possible. Beings who are encumbered by engaging in mental fabrications about the Buddha, he who's not extinguished and has gone beyond all fabrications, fail to see the Tathagata. So the Tathagata is the Tathagata, he is the Buddha, because he's gone beyond all these fabrications. And if we fabricate in our mind, create this absolute Tathagata, we fail to see how the Tathagata really exists. We maybe the presence of the Buddha, who sees things as they really are, but we're still projecting, we're still fantasizing. And so here, the last is important. Whatever is the nature of the Tathagata, that is the nature of migrating beings. The nature of the Tathagata is also our nature. The nature has no inherence. Migrating beings have no inherence. So this is why we're the same. This is where Buddha nature comes in. And this is also why Hondas usually says, verse number 1, we should first read, he is not the aggregate, the Tathagata, and then we should say, I am not the aggregate, nor different from the aggregate. The aggregates are not in him, not in me, nor am I in the aggregates. I am not. So you should apply it to yourself. Because at the very end it says, whatever is the nature of the Tathagata, that's true for everyone. And that is one way why we say we have Buddha nature.
Could you explain it again? Because I didn't get why we...
Oh, sorry.
What is the international?
Yes, I'll say it again. Whatever is the nature of the Tathagata, the lack of inherent existence, the fact that the Tathagata is just labeled, that's also my nature. I also lack inherent existence. So in the same way as the Tathagata has no objective, independent, inherent existence, in the same way I don't have that existence either. Saying migrating beings are beings who migrate and are reborn again and again in samsara. So, that being the same, therefore, the first verse, you don't need to read it. The Tathagata is not the aggregates, not different from the aggregates are not in him. You can do that, but you can also apply it to yourself. Which is why we say we have Buddha nature.
I don't see the connection.
That's the problem. Okay. All right. Let's talk about it. The reason we lack inherent existence is that connects to Buddha nature. And that's a little bit difficult. That's a little bit difficult. So Buddha nature and lack of inherent existence. That the Buddha lacks inherent existence and we lack